This is an open message to the Occupy Wall Street movement, to the 99%. Revolutions are dangerous and unpredictable beasts, and for a population to enter into one without fully understanding what's at stake is a lot like handing a loaded .45 automatic to a toddler. On the other hand, all it takes is a cursory look at the psychopathic criminals which have taken control of the governments of the world to understand why a revolution is inevitable. This is why it's so important that people who are pushing for change take the time and the effort to deeply consider how we got into this mess and what the real solution is. Otherwise, this movement, like so many others which have come before, will be co-opted, twisted, and distorted, and could result in even more power being handed to those who you're trying to fight. Now, you have every reason to be angry. You, your children, and your children's children have been sold into slavery. Literally. If you're lucky enough to have a job in the years to come, you'll end up paying between 25 and 30% of your income in taxes, the majority of which will go directly towards paying interest on debts to privately owned banks. Think about that. 25 to 30%. That means you work between 3 and 4 months each year for the bankers. That's slavery, pure and simple. It's a cleverly disguised form of modern feudalism. And it's not new. It didn't start with the bailouts. The bailouts were just icing on the cake. It was just a little bit too much for most people to swallow. But in reality, the events of the last several years are just an escalation of standard policy. If you truly want to break free from slavery, it's crucial to understand the nature of your enslavement. It's crucial that the masses come to realize that all major currencies, the dollar and the euro in particular, are created out of thin air by privately owned banks. Those banks create money backed by nothing, and they loan that money out to governments in exchange for bonds, which are really just promises that the government will extract that money plus interest from the public. That money is extracted from the people in the form of taxes, and those taxes are taken at gunpoint. Sure, you may not have ever seen the gun in your face, but if you ever refuse to comply, men with guns will show up at your house and drag you off to rot in a cage. Perhaps some people don't want to look at this reality. It's not a flattering image. You don't want to think of yourself as a slave to the 1%, to the private bankers which hold the reins of power. But positive thinking is not going to change things for the better. People who want to fight for real change must take the time to research the true nature of money. Only with that understanding will we be in a position to push for meaningful reforms. But the solution is not equitable taxation. Calling for equitable taxation is like calling for equitable slavery. And if you waste your energy trying to establish an equal level of tax slavery for everyone, then you're going to miss the opportunity to end the enslavement itself. It is utterly immoral to use violence or the threat of violence to take the property or the labor of another person. But perhaps you've been taught otherwise. Perhaps you've been taught that it's okay for the state to use violence to steal from the public. Perhaps you believe that such violence is okay if it's being done for a quote-unquote good cause. I hate to break the bad news, but the ends do not justify the means. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll have to admit that the ends don't ever seem to quite materialize as promised, do they? In the end, you're given a few half-assed services and social programs, but the vast majority of your money goes straight into the pockets of the bankers and the war profiteers. And it always will, if you keep turning to government thugs to enforce your good intentions. You might think that you can change this by creating new laws and regulations, but the fatal flaw in that line of reasoning is the simple fact that if private bankers are allowed to continue creating money, the financial powers that be will always end up using the government like a sock puppet. And those new regulations, as well-intentioned as they may be, will only end up consolidating their power. Right now, there are those in positions of influence which are attempting to redirect and co-opt the Occupy Wall Street movement. A good example of this is the Vatican, which this past week took it upon themselves to propose the establishment of a new global central bank as a solution to these problems. This is the kind of ridiculous proposition that you're going to find being injected into the debate. Those who are in power will do almost anything to stay in power. And the easiest way to do that is to influence the direction of the movement and the solutions which are demanded. Those who created the problem, the real powers that be, don't mind when you react, just as long as they are able to direct that reaction towards artificial solutions which funnel more power into their hands. Problem, reaction, solution. The Hegelian dialectic. It's the oldest trick in the book. Don't fall for it.